Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today on April 2nd, 2023 at approximately 7:28 p.m. PST. Now, I've returned to this world for one primary purpose, and that is to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. Now, I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my own day-to-day life. And the philosophies I talk about are the philosophies I personally live by. Now, with this in mind, and I should have got this done first, so I'm going to do it now. Where are we? Do you believe that's where it is? Let's go back up here and see what we got going on. Here we are. And okay, we are back. Okay, it is turned off. Yeah, big day after April Fool's Day. Well, we have Eternity in here with the gold, and Philip, you are in with the silver. Now I always wait until right at the 7:30 mark to make sure people can get through the door on time. This is pretty much the only time I absolutely lock it down until then. But to be clear, the reason I'm doing this is because I'm striving to actually improve my own public speaking, my own fluidity, my own diction. Okay. It just so happens I wrote the story and therefore have a little better understanding of what it should be. Now, I will apologize ahead of time because fluidity is not the strong suit here. Okay. But this story, The Birth of the Wolf Pack, actually takes place right after the end of the story. Well, shortly after the end of the actual original story. If you go right to the first appendix in the back of The Birth of the Wolf Pack, you will find get right to the end and then dump it. That always works well. Okay, if you go to the appendix right at the back of the story, you'll find the original story that actually spawned this entire thing. Okay. So what I figured, I've already read chunks of this. If you go back over the last couple of Sundays, actually the last, I think, 4 Sundays. Okay. Yeah. Where are we here? That's 4, 3, 2, 1. Yeah. In the month of March, I read the majority of the first 4 chapters of this. Okay. Now, I'm going to read chapter 4 today, but this is where I'm stopping reading it. Okay. Now, is it available to pick up the story to read the rest of it yourself? Absolutely. Okay, and I will call the biggest problem I have is this. With the way I had to write this and with the cost of shipping and what have you, if shipping is not the issue, in other words, if you end up showing up in Kelowna, okay, then I literally sell this at only $40 for the book. Unfortunately, shipping is insane. Okay. Now, it will ship anywhere. The unfortunate part is that the shipping does cost because I cannot afford to handle the whole thing. I'm working on getting a couple of options open. Okay. But in my opinion, the idea of having a physical book in your hand is pretty much well worth it. There's just something about physical books. Now, the other thing that this does is it gives a really nice, solid, this is a form of immortality because there's my name in print. Okay. And I've got actually one book in particular that is in print. Okay. That was written in 1850. Now, wouldn't it be something phenomenal to find 100 years down the road? Well, 75 years down the road. No, 1850. So we're looking at 175 years down the road, would it not be something bizarre to see this book actually still in print? I mean, it would be, in my eyes, it'd be just absolutely insane. Okay, but before I go any further, the characters in this book, there's no accident to it. The characters are all based on, almost all characters are based on characters that I either built myself, or, as in the case of the main characters in The Birth of the Wolfpack, each one of them they're based on characters that were designed by other Dungeons and Dragons players. Okay, or in our case, Aftermath as well. Now, I am absolutely. Oh, whoa! Before we get into it, let's do that. Hunter, how you doing? Now, not knowing that language entirely, I understand Hola. Bashasa la Ouija. Bashase, I suspect. Unfortunately, Hunter, I do not understand what that means. I mean, I understand a little bit of it, but unfortunately, I only speak English fluently. Unless we talk mumblies, slurries, mutteries, yawnies, like these are all variations of the English language. Okay. But, Hunter, you are absolutely in here with the bronze. And what do we got? Okay. Now, I'm going to read chapter 4 here, but this is like I said, the primary characters in the Wolfpack were all designed by gamers, and they're patterned between the characters of the gamers of the actual game and the people that invented them. So, with that said, once I get done reading this, okay, then if you've got questions, I'll absolutely deal with them. Okay, but prior to that, I'm pretty much on the run of chapter 4 here. Okay, now chapter 4. Okay, what do we have? Just a quick little double check here. Whoop. Yeah, chapter 4, Jeremiah, just in chapter 2, it ended up in a major battle. Okay, a major bar fight. Chapter 3, we were dealing with the aftermath and the cleanup from it. And now in chapter 4, we have the reunion. Okay, and like I said, Jeremiah himself, I actually designed Jeremiah for the game of Aftermath. Okay, and most of these characters, not all of them, most of these characters were designed as characters for Aftermath, which is another role-playing game that takes place post-apocalyptic. Okay, it came out in the early 80s. Okay, so without further ado, we have the reunion. Chapter 4, The Reunion. After a time, a young lady dressed in black gradient shorts and a ratty old grayish-white t-shirt advanced upon Jeremiah's table where he was relaxing, sipping a tall pre-ruined rye neat. Bearing a Colt 45 in her right hand, a small cloth satchel seemingly made out of an old flowered pillowcase with a carrying strap in her left, and a belt knife tucked into the right hip of her shorts. The young lady confidently approached his table. Her long, deeply tanned legs were capped off in a pair of worn-out sandals, complete with fraying ankle straps. Her head was held high and proud, topped with a matted, sun-bleached blonde hair that spilled to the center of her back, and her deep blue eyes sparkled with a light and laughter that was seldom seen in the world today. Seldom seen in the modern world. At 5'7", she was a picture of health and wellness of today's world, albeit more than a little unkempt. Mind if I join you? She inquired politely, making certain that her Colt 45 clearly faced the floor. Be my guest, Jeremiah replied, pushing a seat out for her with his black-booted foot, yet otherwise unmoving. My name is Tanya, she stated as she lowered herself smoothly into the seat across from Jeremiah. Placing the Colt on the table just to her right, the barrel facing a little offline from him. Jeremiah, he replied in a voice almost too relaxed for the atmosphere he was apparently resting in. Setting his drink down gently and extending his right hand in greeting, while his left hand nonchalantly came to rest on the stock of his Thompson M1A1, laying casually on the table in front of him. Placing her satchel on the floor beside her and sliding it just under the edge of the table, out of the way of passers-by, Tanya firmly took Jeremiah's hand in time-honored warrior's grasp, forearm to forearm with hands clasped near the elbow. Tanya Jan Scott, she replied. The way Tanya had placed her pistol told Jeremiah of her real comfort with the weapon and the awareness that go along. Well, have to correct that. As we know, all books have hiccups in them. And the awareness that go along with it. Clearly, this was not a woman to be taken lightly. So what brings you to Casey's, Jeremiah, if you don't mind my asking, pressed Tanya, her deep blue eyes darting from side to side, obviously searching for any sign of trouble. Clearly, she wasn't just focused on the man seated across from her, but the surrounding area as well. Jeremiah was all too familiar with this way of life, and noting the intensity with which Tanya was scanning the area, Jeremiah similarly went on high alert, analyzing the room and visible area outside the bar with greater concentration. Peering out the window and into the fading afternoon light, Jeremiah noticed a massive snub-nosed flatbed with 8 armor-shielded seats with 50 caliber machine guns securely set on pintail mounts on the deck, pulling into the lot. The purple, mauve, and pink camouflage patterning adorning the entirety of the vehicle and the spiked metal wheels made it clearly identifiable as the Tarmac Terror. Just holding up for a bit, he replied, taking another sip from his glass while discreetly loosening his katana in its sheath. Holding up from what? Inquired Tanya, signaling over her shoulder for the barmaid to come and take her order. Had a little run-in with a Kamalian patrol, continued Jeremiah. A Kamalian patrol, Tanya interrupted him in astonishment, instantly jumping to conclusions, the obvious anger welling up inside her and flashing to life behind her sparkling deep blue eyes. And you're still alive? She challenged, leaning ominously forward towards Jeremiah, planting her feet instinctively in combat ready mode. Just at that moment, a young, well-built barmaid with faded brown, waist-length hair showed up at their table. May I get you something to drink, miss? She asked in a low yet assertive voice, her smoky blue eyes flitting back and forth warily as the obvious tension continued to climb between the two guests before her. That would be nice, replied Tanya, glancing up, her hardened face instantly softening as she did so. Could you get me a draft, please? Jeremiah noticed there was something ironically classy about the bearing Tanya concealed with consummate ease beneath her tough exterior, but he would give more thought to that later. Right away, ma'am, replied the barmaid as she turned and hurried off. Jeremiah watched with one eye as the lightly tanned barmaid worked her way back into the crowd, particularly noting the bowie knife on her right hip and the snub-nosed .357 Magnum pistol on her left hip. He also noticed how she carried herself with such ease and confidence as she maneuvered through such a complicated and potentially dangerous environment. As soon as the barmaid was gone, Tanya angrily spun back towards Jeremiah as her hand automatically tightened its grip on the belt knife in her shorts. There's only one type of human that could survive a run-in with the chameleons, Tanya hissed as her knife cleared its sheath and began dancing before Jeremiah's eyes, shifting perfectly between her hands in the process. And that's a quisling, she snapped, as she leapt to her feet, knocking her chair aside as she rose. Her knife flashed ominously before her eyes aflame as she began maneuvering into as advantageous a combat position as possible. Simultaneously, almost as if on cue, the neighboring patrons cleared out of the way, taking their drinks, meals, and gear with them, just as the peacekeepers began to play another crowd favorite, The Dragon's Descent. This was just a normal day at Casey's. Seldom did a meal ever go uninterrupted. On any given day, emotions fluctuated to the extreme, and misunderstandings were far too common. Such was the way of the new frontier. This was the world that Jeremiah had yet again found himself embroiled in, as he worked towards co-creating a better world for all. Admittedly, this was indeed a more violent method than he had originally envisioned. However, in Jeremiah's eyes, you work with what you have. In one fluid motion, forgetting his newly bound ribs for the moment, Jeremiah flipped the table towards Tanya with his right knee, while grabbing his short mug with his right hand and his Thompson with his left, sending the pitcher flying to land upside down on the dirt floor, along with the table, the grenade launcher, and the rounds. To his pleasant surprise, Tanya managed to sidestep and avoid the table and the jug, and now stood facing him with blade bare. It wasn't often that he squared off with one astute and quick enough to dodge his first strike. And the only good quizzling Jeremiah is a dead one. It's a dead quizzling, exclaimed Tanya as she began to dance, striking out periodically, clearly seeking an opening. I couldn't agree with you more, stated Jeremiah, as he matched her move for move, whilst barely stepping out of the range of her blade when necessary, working his way towards a nearby table. He subsequently set his shine down upon it, along with his gun. To Jeremiah, this was just another upstart, spoiling for a fight, though at least this one had some finesse. Since he was a little stiff with the earlier confrontation, this little impromptu sparring match seemed like a reasonable way to limber up. In spite of, or perhaps because of the new stitching, then you also agree that what I do now I must do, she stated, as she circled the fallen table, still pushing to create an opening, while admiring the grace with which her adversary moved with such understated ease. As the duel unfolded, the patrons of Casey's rapidly cleared the other furniture out of the way, creating, in effect, an impromptu battle ring. Responding to the beauty and intensity of the escalating duel, the peacemakers extended their rendition of The Dragon's Descent in tempo with the conflict, transitioning right into thunder and lightning. Simultaneously, several bets were being laid around the room as to whom was going to win the duel, how many bystanders would get drawn into the fray, how much collateral damage would result, and anything else one could possibly imagine. I'll take the winner, cried the voice from the crowd. 10-1 odds against the mouthy one, crowed another patron nearby. You're on, barked a third patron, bursting into laughter as he did so. And so it was, a simple fight between two individuals once again became a major social endeavor and business venture all at the same time. No, replied Jeremiah, his left leg lashing out at Tanya in a leaping snap kick, barely catching her left shoulder as she ducked out of the way, scarcely out of step of her original target. Tanya returned with a well-placed kidney punch. Fortunately for Jeremiah, she used her empty hand and struck him on the side away from his broken ribs. driving him forward into the crowd. There are always choices to be made, regardless of the situation one faces, he grunted, carrying off the other patrons and down onto the floor. The force of the blow temporarily knocking the wind out of him. Coming out of a combat roll and back onto his feet, he continued circling once again in preparation for the next move. But sadly, you are also lacking some important information in this case, he informed her. Honestly appreciating the speed and grace with which Tanya's knife switched hands, as well as her sure-footedness amongst the debris. Now, that is quite literally where Chapter 4 ends. And yes, Chapter 4 was a very short chapter. And sometimes we ended up with that. Okay. But, then, like I said, I was only reading Chapter 4 tonight. Okay. Next Sunday, I will be moving on. And I don't know, I've got to figure out exactly when. Okay, where I'll pick it up. Okay. But next week, I'll be starting with the end of an epoch. Now, this is the direct sequel to The Birth of the Wolfpack. Okay. But the nice part about it, from your standpoint, okay, is I took the last part of the last chapter, The Birth of the Wolfpack, to write the prologue for the end of an epoch. Now, with that in mind, I won't be reading the first few chapters of the end of an epoch because I don't want to give away the end of the Birth of a Wolfpack. But I got to look ahead and see where I'm going to be starting with it. Okay. So, I mean, that ultimately is why I'm doing it that way. Don't know what's going to come up after this. This will end up taking probably the month of April and possibly into the month of May, depending on what I decide to read. Okay. And in that time, I will have to sort out what comes next. Or if you got an idea or a request, absolutely let me know. Okay. But like I said, if you take a look under this video, under any one of my videos, there's a whole list of ways of getting a hold of me, which is not a problem. Well, thank you very much, Eternity. I do appreciate that. It is a couple of things that has happened with The Birth of the Wolfpack. Because of where it happened, because of the way it took place. There's a lot of flashbacks. There's a lot of throughout the series, there's a lot of foreshadowings that are all tied together. This is one of the reasons why I'm writing all 12 of the books at the same time. Funny part about it, well, I don't know if it's funny from your end, as I was tying off the Return to Paradise, which is the third installment, I figured out, tied it off the way I desired it to be tied off. But in the process of it, not only did I figure out how to pull it back to book one and make it a complete loop, but I also came up with a completely new storyline, so that when people come to the end of The Birth of the Wolfpack, or to the end of the Return to Paradise, they can either go back and read the entirety of how the whole thing came about, in which case you get to discover what soulmates are, where Jeremiah came from, how he came about, where Tanya, who was built by another gamer. Okay. And to be clear, there are 7 people. Yeah, 7? I got 3, 4, 5. Yeah, there are 7 people in the Wolfpack. That are all built by individual gamers. And what ended up happening, so you've got the option of either going back and seeing how all that came open, or by the time I get to that, I will hopefully have the first book of the next series taking off at the same time. Where people can either go back and see where it all came from, or you've got the option, and this is just a plan at this point. Okay, it's just a plan in the works to get to get the next story out, the next sequence out, which is a book that the working title at this point, let me just make sure I get it right here. The next book for the next series to follow the Yldrbacian Chronicles, is quite frankly the Beyond the Portal. And you'll come to understand that when you get to the end of book 12. Okay. But this is book 10 in the series. Okay. What did I just do with it? Oh, put it back. This would be book 11. But you'll notice, if you take a look at it, the bindings produce an actual image. Okay. And that image, as the books come out, will become more and more apparent. Same as if we take a look at the back of it, if you're buying them directly through me, they're being designed in such a way as to form a collage in the background as well. Now you've got Jeremiah here. This is Wilhelm, and you'll find out about him. There's Tanya. Then we've got on the other side, the blonde chap is Dirk. And then you've got Blade. And there's two more that are not yet in these covers. Okay, but that's all coming about. Now, I call it science fiction, science fantasy, because as you can tell, whole pile of different things. And like I said, there's a lot of fantastic writers out there. Okay, and I by no means claim to be amongst the best. That is for you guys. I will tell you I am a gamer. I do have, at this point, I've only got a few, and I'll show you what we've got. Okay. Right now, I am actually working on pictures to be sent in, but I'll show you what's going on. Okay. In the first printing, which is this one, you'll see it does have color maps. Okay. That one's a color map, and of course, there's another one close. There's that one. Then there is a closer color map, a more localized one. And we get past the prologue, and we have the actual layout of Casey's Bar and Grill, the bar that this is all taking place in. Okay, now what you don't see there, I just gotta go to the back end of the first chapter here, or more to the point, the beginning of chapter 2. And you see this little page here. Okay, I don't think you can read it likely, but that little writing on that page on its own says this page has been intentionally left blank for illustrations in future printings. There will be an entire set. In this case, this book will have a total, when the second printing gets done, we'll have a total of, I think, 31. Yeah, because there should be 31 chapters, I do believe. Yeah, that's 29, so we go a little further. There's 30. Yeah, there will be a total of 31 black and white pictures in this book in the second printing. I'm just getting covers done for the other ones right off the bat. Then I'm going back in and getting some internal artwork done. Okay, what I'm doing is I'm doing my best to get all of the pictures done by the same artist. Have I toyed around with using another artist for the inside of this? Certainly. Okay, but I'm working on, I'm looking at not so much the speed of getting these out, but, I've got pictures lined up that I already know what I'm working with. So there will be pictures in here as well. Now, granted, the pictures will not be, they will not be as detailed as they could be, because I'm deliberately leaving them relatively minor. Okay. Now, that said, it's going to take a little time to get that sorted around. But this runs sometimes really quickly. I will tell you, this is not a bedtime story for children. You desire a bedtime story for children, these two will work quite nicely. But don't do that. Okay, these two work really well as storybooks for children. As a matter of fact, come to think of it, I just figured out how I can work with this. Now, remember, if you've watched any of my videos, you know I keep telling people everything's connected. Okay. Well, what I'm going to end up doing, and I even just figured out now, literally right now, how to take this, especially this book here. Okay. And I figured exactly how to tie it in where my other writings are also being brought to bear. Now, do understand, okay, when I'm looking at this, what do we got here? Going back up to, hey, I don't think I mentioned that. Yes, I did. But yeah, ultimately, I am tying everything together. Okay, the idea at this point is get the stories written. Ultimately, do I desire this to become my primary income? Absolutely. Hence why I've got 40 books in the process of being written. Now, with all that said and done, I really want to thank you guys for joining me. Next Sunday, I will start in somewhere, and I don't know exactly where because I got to get out of the mainstream because I do not desire to give you give away the end of the birth of the wolf pack, because it picks up right where this picks up right where the birth of the wolf pack came to an end. So I got to move into it a couple of chapters to make sure everything is settled down enough to do so. Okay, but with that in mind, like I said, this was going to be a short run anyway. Okay, because this is just for the purposes of reading that part of it. And we are having fun getting that to stand up properly. That's always joyful. Of course, it'd probably be easier if I actually stood up, but what the heck. Okay. But tomorrow is Monday, and it's a toss-up right now whether I will actually make it onto the air tomorrow. I think I've got an issue I have to deal with, so it's going to be touch and go, but I will do my best. If not, I will let you know as soon as I can. But I just have family things I have to deal with. Okay. In the meantime, okay, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. Thank you for joining me. And I do look forward to seeing you again in the near future. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.